Hi there, welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawwalker, your host. Today we're going to be covering the sixth Pink Floyd record, Meddle. In 1971, Pink Floyd would come together for one of their best efforts pre-Dark Side of the Moon, obviously. I had been thinking about covering a Pink Floyd album for quite a while now, but I wasn't quite sure which one to pick. This one, however, stood out the most to me as it's one of their earlier albums. It's pre-Dark Side of the Moon. It's not a concept album, and you have all of the original lineup except for obviously Syd Barrett. And I think that this record stands out alone amongst those as just having some really, really high quality material and not really any weak tracks at all on this record. So today I figured we'd cover that. Track listing is as follows. Side 1 you have One of These Days, track 2 is A Pillow of Winds, track 3 is Fearless, track 4 is Saint Tropez, and track 5 is Seamus. And side 2 of the record is one song, Echoes. It's around 20-25 minutes long, something like that, but very long, epic track. We're going to cover this thing in full, and we will come back to you on the flip side. Alrighty, we're back with side 1 of the record. Track 1, One of These Days. This opening track just fills the air with the sound of like billowing wind and this really crisp bass line that builds a ton of tension in the track. After this bass line starts going for a while, you get these really sharp synthesizers just like cutting into the mix here. Every once in a while they kind of just build up more and more of this noise as like this wind sort of effect grows louder in the background. And all this builds up and it keeps building and building and going and going, and it really makes for one of Pink Floyd's best tension-breaking tracks, I think, in their discography, and probably one of like the best uses of building tension in a song in like really any classic rock music. The build-up in this song is just perfect. Once it hits this point after the only lyrics in this song, One of These Days I'm going to cut you into little pieces, are said, you get this huge release and these just mammoth sounding drums come into the mix and this amazing like swooping guitar work, and it's like it turns into a guitar solo with like lots of use of like, you know, whammy and like trem effects, and it just has one of the biggest sounds of any song that I think exists. And all of this is accompanied by like one of like, I think, the coolest soundscapes in their whole discography as well. This is definitely one of the tracks to be enjoyed at like really high volume. Pink Floyd is not one of those bands that you really think about as like requiring a ton of volume to listen to, but honestly I think just like the depth of their mixing, especially on this album, it's just so rich that if you don't listen to it at like a good high volume, you're gonna miss some of the stuff in the low end that they're doing. It's a really, really interesting track to listen to just because of like the little nuances in the mix here and there, and this song is just like perfect for that. Track 2 is A Pillow of Winds. You get a much slower and much more relaxing song with some of David Gilmour's best lyric writing and like really lovely delivery on his vocals. This album is just loaded to the brim with like aquatic themed writing. It really comes through on this song in the instrumentals with just like a really excellent grasp of like the vision of this album. It's not all necessarily like aquatic themes in like the lyrics, but like you can tell that like this is kind of like a blue period album. It's like there's a lot of melancholy on this album. There's a lot of like brooding, and it's not inherently like sad, but it's just like a very moody record, and they sort of accompany it with like a lot of these very aquatic sort of soundscapes and a lot of aquatic sounding instruments, and you get more of that on side 2 with Echoes, but on side 1, I mean like the billowing wind of a storm off the last track, and then just like a lot of these like really pretty like slide guitar touches here. Everything is just really well put together instrumentation wise and lyric wise, and just tonally. There's not really a weak moment on this track and on most of this album. Track 3 is Fearless. You get another Pink Floyd classic. The main riff on this song, in my opinion, is one of their most iconic. Much like the last track, this song is extraordinarily mellow, as are most of the tracks on this side of the record. As far as song progression goes, this track doesn't really change it up too much, but I think just the quality of the songwriting for Fearless is just so good that it really doesn't need to change up too much. It's just kind of pulling you through a very relaxed and mellow experience, and it really doesn't need to change up much at all. The song does end with this really huge roaring crowd and this big chanting echo that kind of fades off, but it's when it stands alone in the mix, it just is kind of like hypnotizing. It's just the volume behind it and just kind of the will of all the people just chanting this like thing in unison is just really excellent, and I think it was the perfect way to bookend this song here. Track 4 is Saint-Tropez. This track, it's got such a vibe about it. You know, it's a picturesque song that when you listen to it, you can't help but think of like lazily, like, you know, falling asleep on the beach with like a bottle of wine in hand. It's, you know, the lyrics here, once again, they kind of get to the aquatic stuff towards the end of the song, but for the most part are just like really, really pleasant, and just the whole vibe of this song is just all sandals and button-ups. Like, it is borderline a Beach Boys song at this point. Track 5, the final track on side 1, is Seamus. Very nice little lilting track about a dog. One of the bluesiest songs in their entire catalog, and one of the shorter ones on this record. And I would say this isn't necessarily a weak point on the record. You don't listen to this album for Seamus. It's a good song, but, you know, it's one that like I personally have kind of slept on, but like, I think what really caught my attention about it this time around is just like how good the slide guitar work is on this song, and like the really weird like audio range they're working with like these noises of dogs like barking and howling in the background, and you can like kind of hear like, you know, glasses clinking and crap like that, and it's just a really rich song, like tonally, and definitely some of Pink Floyd's best blues guitar work. So that is side 1 of the record. We are going to come back to you after side 2 with Echoes, and we'll see you on the flip side. Okay, we are back with side 2 of Pink Floyd's Meddle. The final track on the album is Echoes. This track really ramps up the nautical themes on this album, with a sonar track starting off this Leviathan-sized track. The soundscape they build here with this very reverb-heavy piano and gentle guitar soloing continues over into a huge release of organ and bass that leads into the main segment of this track. The mental imagery of the lyrics on this song is immediate and very powerful and breathtaking. This is a lush song full of tonal wonders. The wall of sound this song creates at high volume is less of a blanket and more of a warm embrace, with stunning highs and rich lows. If someone asked me which Pink Floyd song I would want to hear the band play live, and I only got to pick one song, it would definitely be Echoes. Just off of the sheer like songwriting capability that went into this song, I would not want to hear any other track. It would have to be Echoes, just because of how hefty and brilliant this track is. After this massive guitar solo from David Gilmour, we get this really killer groove between the bass and the drums that lasts a good number of minutes and sort of fades off into perhaps like the strangest segment of the song, with the guitars that billow out like this sort of emulation of like whale song. This segment lasts a few minutes and in many ways is like very haunting and quite beautiful. It's almost too strange to really describe, and I wouldn't even know if haunting is the correct way to describe it. It's just such an odd, out of left field segment, but for Pink Floyd, they make it work brilliantly. They pull it off completely. Once that whale segment, that strange segment ends, the next portion of the track begins much like the very start of this song, with another slow build and sonar accompaniment. This sort of penultimate section brings back the track around a full circle with this beautiful cymbal arrangement and this huge soaring guitar part over top of this heavy, drawn-out sort of bass notes into the return of the lyrics and the very end of the track, which is very much like the beginning lyrics part of this track, and it sort of builds and fades out from there. But this is definitely, in my opinion, one of Pink Floyd's most powerful moments, and it just really solidifies just how legendary this band is in the context of music history. Like I said, there was a good selection of Pink Floyd to review for this channel, and I think Meddle is definitely one of the albums that has, for me, stuck around the hardest. Like, I love Dark Side of the Moon. I really like The Division Bell. The Wall has been growing on me a lot over the years, and I just think that this arrangement of the band and this style of songwriting is just so fitting for them as a band. and I am very happy, like, whenever I listen to this album. It's just such a cathartic record, you know. When you put this album on, like, cover to cover, it doesn't feel like, you know, a 40-50 minute long album. Like, it feels like just one cohesive experience that goes by in a flash. And if you have not listened to this album, I would highly encourage any of you to listen to this. It is brilliant. I love it. If you don't like it, why don't you like it? Leave a comment below on your opinions on this record. Thank you all so much for watching. More reviews to come. Leave a comment and tell me what I should review. Give me some suggestions. And thank you again, and we will see you on the flip side.